ashes of Matthew Shepard have not been laid to rest.
His parents worried that if they chose a final resting place for their son, it'd be at risk of desecration.
Now they found a safe place.
On October 26, in 6 days, Matthew Shepard will finally be buried at the Washington National Cathedral.
A lot has changed in the 20 years that Matthew Shepard was abducted, tied to a fence, and left to die. A lot has changed, but not everything has changed. Code CYQ presents Moises Coffin's The Laremy Project.
Laremy sparkles, doesn't it? And where he was up there, Laremy sparkles. It's the blue lights bouncing off the clouds right over the whole city. I can picture his eyes. I can picture what he was seeing. The last thing he saw on Earth. The sparkling lights.
Was blind, but now I see.
The essential facts.
Aaron McKinney
We had
and
karaoke that night. Matthew sitting right where you're sitting. Around 10:30, Matthew didn't seem to have any words, just enjoying his drink. Hid for a pitcher of beers with diamond quarters. That's what they said in Matthew approached them.
They say it was get him in the truck and rob him.
He was a human being.
There was dry blood all over his head. He was barely breathing. The only place he did not have blood on his face was where he had been crying.
I was working in emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. You expect these kinds of injuries to come from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You don't expect to see it from a person doing it to another person.
His hands were thumbs out, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin rope. His shoes were missing.
The fence.
I've been out there 4 times. That place has become a pilgrimage site. It is so stark, so empty. You can't help but think of Matthew there for 18 hours, freezing temperatures, and God, why have you forsaken me? Comes to mind.
The news stories.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the Gem City of the Plains, is now the eye of the storm.
The defense
Tough
came
to
force
be
that
engaged
boat
in
came from
cowboy
Soviet
country.
homes.
There's reporters everywhere, news trucks, hundreds of reporters. These people are predators.
Matthew Shepard, medical update.
Where there have been 2 or 3 reporters, it must have been 15 photographers, 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition at approximately 9:15 on October 7th. He was unresponsive from hypothermia and a fracture to the head, which has caused bleeding to the brain. His temperature fluctuated 98 degrees to 106. Matthew's parents arrived at approximately 7 p.m. on October 9th and are now at his side. They asked that the media respect their privacy as well as Matthew's.
The blood. There was just such an overwhelming amount of blood. We try to wear protective gloves, but you put them on, and they keep breaking, so finally you just run out of gloves, so you tell yourself, well, don't hesitate, so you try to help, and just... About a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me that Matthew had HIV. So I was kind of screwed.
They were kids themselves. The fact that they were kids themselves, local kids,
just
that
so
everyone in the town
sweet.
had some relationship to.
Eagle Scout.
My secret hope was
I
there
just
from
want to
somewhere
shake
else.
him, you know?
That we don't treat children like that here.
What were you thinking?
The strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew was brought in, Aaron was brought in. He'd gotten into a fight later on. So I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in. I don't know there's a connection. So I tell Aaron to wait, and I go treat Matthew.
Aaron was a good kid, that's why I was shocked. At the time I knew him, he was just a young kid. He wanted to fit in.
2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. They were 2 kids, and I took care of both of them. I wondered if this is how God feels, how we are all his kids, our bodies and our souls. And I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
During the trial of Aaron McKinney, the prosecution played his confession.
So you and Russ go to Fireside. Where do you go after you leave?
Some kid just wanted to ride home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer, you know?
What happened next?
We drove him past Walmart, we got there, then he starts grabbing my leg. I was like, look, I'm not gay. If you do that again, you're gonna get it.
What did you beat him with?
My fist, my pistol, the butt of the gun. I had a few beers.
It's like I could see what was happening, but like someone else was doing it.
Did he ever try to defend himself?
I mean, he tried little swings, but they weren't very effective.
How many times did you hit him in the truck?
About 2 or 3 times with my fist and about 6 times with the pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Most of all he was doing was screaming.
So Russ sort of dragged him over to the fence.
I remember Russ was laughing at first, but then he got pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious when you tied him up?
Look, I told him to turn around and don't to get my license plate because I was scared.
He read it, and that's when I hit him a few more times.
Just to be sure.
Is he gonna die?
The protest!
A bunch of the high school kids came over and started yelling at some of the people in the protest, the Fred Phelps people.
You know about his character in spreading AIDS. He flaunted it. Why they exemplified him, I don't know.
A crime is a crime if you murder someone you hate them.
Do you believe in the Bible? 2 times for every verse it talks about God's love, it talks about God's hate. God's hatred is pure.
Is homosexuality okay? If God doesn't hate them, why does he send them to hell?
Laremy is not this kind of town. But it is that kind of town. If it wasn't this kind of town, then why did this happen here? We are like this.
If you would have asked me before, I would have told you that Laremy is a beautiful town. Now I would say that Laremy is a town defined by a crime. We've become Waco.
Laramie's live and not live.
I remember a guy dressed in all leather and spikes everywhere. He came from across the street and I thought it was going to be a really ugly confrontation. But then all of a sudden, he started leading us in amazing grace.
Monday, October 12th, 12 midnight. Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop.
We immediately notified the family that was already at the hospital.
I went into the ICU where the family was. And we just stood there, honestly, for about 10 minutes. Because what else do you do?
At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard had died.
Dennis Shepard made the following statement.
My son did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 to the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved himself to be a winner. On October 12th, my son and my hero died. I keep wondering the same thing that I did when I first saw him in the hospital. What would he become? How could we have changed this piece of the world to make it a better place?
Mr. McKinney and Mr. Henderson left him out there by himself. But he wasn't alone. He had his lifelong friends with him. First, he had the beautiful night sky and the same stars and moon that we used to see through a telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scent of